Well, what a week for diversity and free speech in the city of Toronto. First, during the annual Al-Quds Hate Fest, we had an Islamist openly profess his love for Sharia law and how he hoped that it will replace Canadian law in the future. And shockingly, our dominion under Sharia law would allow the authorities to bring about Quranic morality, like, for example, executing gay people. No, he really said that, folks. But a few days later, a fecal storm really erupted when street preacher David Lynn ventured into the gay village to preach the gospel. And for having the temerity to do so, he was arrested and hauled off to jail. What's wrong with this picture? Joining me now is a Toronto columnist extraordinaire. She's fearless, she's courageous, she's even cute as a bun. Let's welcome Sue-Ann Levy of the Toronto Sun. Welcome to Rebel World Headquarters, Sue-Ann.
And I want to thank you 13 years later for getting me out of the closet.
Yeah. But who's counting? Yeah, that's true, folks. I once wrote a sarcastic column about the gay pride parade in Toronto. Sue-Ann Levy took such exception. She actually came out of the closet, and it was the best thing you ever did, wasn't it?
And then I met my wife, Denise, and we've been happily married for 10
years. And now you're even a friend of the Menzoid,
yeah,
right?
I adore the Menzoid.
See, it all worked out for the best. But, you know, too bad we don't have such love in the world as what happened with our relationship, Sue-Ann, in terms of being good friends after getting off on the wrong foot. Because we had this gentleman, you were at the Al-Quds rally, you know what kind of despicable hate and anti-Semitic rhetoric is spewed. Calling for the execution of people who have your sexual orientation simply because you are gay. That is a capital crime. And yet, nothing, crickets. A few days later, a Christian street pastor goes down to the gay village, preaches the gospel, doesn't advocate harm or condemnation for anyone of any stripe. The cops come in, haul him off, put him in jail overnight. He says he was mistreated. Sue-Ann Levy, what is wrong with this picture? We
have a crazy upside-down world, and I think that our cops in Toronto, I'm actually ashamed of the way they handled the Al-Quds rally. 100+ cops on horses, on bikes, on foot, essentially keeping the peace when they were actually ordered by City Hall, by City Council, to act swiftly, to issue trespass orders. These people did not have a permit, and to deal with the hate that was being spewed.
And Sue-Ann Levy, you've covered this very thoroughly in the Toronto Sun. These were resolutions passed last month.
Yes.
Basically, if you're going onto city property and you don't have a permit, and they didn't have a permit, you will be, as you said, issued trespass notices. They should have. Instead, not only were they not issued trespass notices, they got a police escort down major thoroughfares of Toronto.
Up University, across Dundas, down Bay, and then across Queen.
So why wasn't the city's own law implemented? Why were the agents of law enforcement aiding and abetting these people?
Because I think there's a double standard. I think they're afraid to cross swords, for a lack of a better word, with certain elements of the community in Toronto. And it troubles me. I've always felt that certainly anti-Semitism is on the rise. I've experienced it as a Jewish reporter. I've experienced more anti-Semitism than I do homophobia or anything like that these days.
Interesting.
And I think that, they are loath. They're afraid of being sued. They're being afraid of being called Islamophobic. I think all of that's going on.
And to contrast that, we have the street preacher. Now, I interviewed him very recently, and I was playing devil's advocate. I was saying you were going into a part of the city where people might not be receptive of your speech. I'm a free speech absolutist. I still think that gives them the right to go there. But that's besides the point. What is the point is how the police reacted. He didn't say anything that violates the criminal code or the Kangaroo Court human rights code. So why do you think it was that, like a papal bull, the authorities clamped down on him to such a degree?
Okay, well, so number one, I don't think the police should have been called in the first place. So there are certain elements of the gay community who, to this day, feel totally oppressed, and they've lived off their oppression. I've dealt with them as I've written about Pride. I've gotten hate from them. So there's that element. And then the police, I think, were trying to compensate. They overcompensated because they mishandled the Bruce McArthur serial killings that they were trying to make up. That was the first thought I had when I heard this poor guy had been trotted off to jail and charged. He shouldn't have even been, the police shouldn't have been called. He shouldn't have been charged. You know, obviously in this city, there are certain people who have the right to free speech, even if it's hateful, and there are certain people who don't have the right to free speech.
But you know, Sven, I think you've made a fantastic and profound observation tying this into the Bruce McArthur serial killer. For those of our viewers that don't know this story, he was a serial killer that preyed upon gay men, primarily in the gay village. It's alleged that the police botched the investigation. I tend to think, given the evidence of the matter, I think they did. I think they were asleep at the switch, and he could have been captured much earlier, but that's my opinion. What you're saying, though, is, I guess, to help restore frayed feelings in the gay community, the police overreacted the other way by shutting down this street preacher.
Yeah, I don't think they exercise good judgment. And you know, as you know, for the third year in a row, they have been banned from the Gay Pride Parade, from marching in their uniforms, which I also think is shameful, by a fringe element. Now, I've done many interviews with Olivia Nuama, the executive director of Pride, and she would prefer it that they were in the parade. She feels that they have made gains, but this fringe element of members of the community, to which I just or to whom I just referred, they voted to ban them for a third year in a row. So I think the police are trying to grapple with restoring, as you say, some sort of relationship.
And I don't mean to get off on a tangent, but I want to say on that point, Sue-Ann, I think this is a disgrace that they've been banned for 3 years in a row.
Yes,
and I'll tell you why.
I agree.
First of all, there are policemen and policewomen who are gay, and so you're basically banning the very people that would love to be part of that festivity. Secondly, the Pride Parade gets money in the I think over $200,000 in municipal funding. It's in that ballpark. 260. So why can't we have a mayor? And yeah, I'm speaking about you, Mr. Tory.
We're talking about you.
Yeah, have the testicular fortitude to say, if you're going to ban city employees from carrying out their job on city property, city funding is being pulled from your little parade.
Let's not forget that they get almost $1 million in free policing.
Yep.
This is the great irony.
Yep.
About $500,000 in free policing, cleanup, permit services. They get all of that free. And this is the thing I've argued for the last 3 years.
So
and
why
yes,
isn't this being done then?
And yes, you're right.
Yep.
John Tory does not want to offend anyone. And I think in his inability to address this in a strong way, he's actually made the situation far worse than it needed to be. And this has dragged on so long. And I think yesterday at the flag raising, or at the flag raising that occurred on Tuesday, June 4th, they, I guess, sort of forgot that the police are no longer involved or aren't involved this year. There was no discussion about it.
Wow.
It's like out of sight, out of mind. And I find that offensive as well.
It's a disgrace, but getting back to the issue du jour, Sue-Ann, I did interview very recently Reverend Lynn. He said nothing that qualifies as a criminal act or even a human rights thought crime act. He was just preaching the Christian gospel. I did say, to be contrarian, well, you know, why would you go to a neck of the woods in Toronto, the gay village, where people wouldn't be receptive of that argument? Do you have any insight, Sue-Ann, why he would do this? And secondly, is there not some irony here that for many decades, those in the gay community, as they were fighting for equal rights, said, show some tolerance, show some understanding, and then when he says something that might not jive with their worldview, they seem to be completely intolerant.
Oh, welcome to my world. Welcome to my world. Now, look, you know, probably he was poking the bear by going to the corner of Church and Wellesley. I probably wouldn't have picked that site, or maybe I would have, because I tend to poke the bear as well. But having said that, I heard what he said, and it was very respectful. He was very respectful. This is what he believes. And, you know, he didn't say anything hateful. No. He didn't talk about murder. He didn't talk about eradication of Jews or Israelis, as the Al-Quds people did. And, you know, the problem is the gay community. There is a very intolerant element, and I've heard from many of them. I've been told I don't deserve to be walking cheek by jowl with them because I happen to be a gay conservative. Well, you know, gay conservatives don't exist. So I must be a self-loathing lesbian.
Oh, just another disgrace. And you know, Sue-Ann, I have to throw out there, in terms of, you know, tolerance and understanding, there sure seems to be a lot of that when it comes to Islam.
Yes.
We know there are mosques where, you know, kill the Jew is part of the rhetoric in terms of religious services. We saw what this guy said in high definition and full audio. And I want to contrast that. On Sunday, the Toronto Raptors, you know, had a game against Golden State, and afterwards there was some drunken Lugan who went up to a female reporter, and in her mic he said the de rigueur, F her right in the you-know-where.
Yeah.
It's vulgar, it's disgraceful, it's not even funny. It's been said 100 times over. It wasn't funny originally, it isn't funny now. And yet when I saw media roundtables in this city going, you know what, if we see him in high def, we're going to identify him. I wish I was his boss. I can hardly wait to fire him. I can hardly wait to criminally charge him. And meanwhile, this Islamist is saying, I want to kill people like you. Can you connect those dots?
Well, we were the only media covering Al-Quds. I think I did see City TV.
Yes.
Probably took some footage. But really, I'm the only mainstream media person who's been covering it consistently.
I think the Star had a columnist out there for it too.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Rosie DiManno was there. My mistake, because I stood right beside her. And they also put her through, you know, grilling her on her credentials. But, you know, the thing is that it doesn't get the attention, and it should get the attention, and it seems to be that anything that might suggest Islamophobia or criticism of Islam or criticism of the radical group of Islamists. There are many peaceful Muslims. I'm not talking about those who just want to live their lives. I'm talking about that group down in University on Saturday that spewed hate, spewed vitriol against Israel and lies about Israel.
Of course. In fact, when you say Israel's an apartheid state, we know it is not.
Yeah.
So if the premise for your BDS movement is based on a lie, then what is the real motivation for it? I would suggest, Sue-Ann, just good old-fashioned anti-Semitism.
Exactly. And they don't like to be exposed. They did not like that you were there. They did not like that I was there. They did not like that Rosie DiManno was there. They don't like media exposure. And
you know, just to, one last thing, because it can't go unsaid. Just the other day, I was in Ottawa covering the Standing Committee on Justice and Human Rights, something that's not getting nearly enough publicity, because this is all about resurrecting Section 13 into the Canadian Human Rights Act. This is the pro-censorship, anti-free speech provision that the Harper Conservatives in 2013 got rid of. This will have nothing more than further limiting freedom of speech in the square. That's why the Harper Conservatives got away with it. I can understand the likes of, you know, Liberals and NDP supporting this, but what I am just gobsmacked about, Sue-Ann, is that where is Andrew Scheer on this issue? Where are the Conservatives on this issue, including dozens of Conservatives that were part of the Harper government that killed Section 13? I think that's a disgrace, and I think if this gets reinstated, what we see going on in the public square in terms of free speech is going to be even further diminished.
well, I would take that one step further. And Andrew Scheer is deathly afraid to mention the word R, the R word. our word being refugee. He
Oh,
does not
yes.
like to talk about it. We don't talk about immigration. We don't talk about refugee. And this is a big concern to Canadians. We've just had a flood of people crossing the border illegally.
Yep.
And he doesn't talk about that. He doesn't talk about his plan. So I don't know whether it was M103 or just the fear of being called names or the fear of being sued, but you know, they're not addressing, he's not showing that he has the intestinal fortitude to address things that are of concern to Canadians.
How shameful. You know, I have a feeling that this lack of spine might just blow it for him, because I think there are those in the Conservative base, when you mentioned the issues you just did, refugees, especially the illegal ones, the ones gaming the system,
Right.
you know, walking in from Roxton Road, and you know, and they're clearly not, you know, refugees. Freedom of speech. This is what true Conservatives champion, you know, clamping down on illegal immigration, championing freedom of speech. And Andrew Scheer, what is worried that the mean girls at the CBC and the Toronto Star and the Globe and Mail might
He's not going to
criticize
ever
him.
win them over. He's
Yeah,
not.
exactly.
So focus on the people you can, focus on people who are looking for an alternative to Justin Trudeau. You and I have covered enough election campaigns to know that that's where he should be focusing his efforts. People are looking for a solution. They're already after one term. Justin Trudeau could be a one-term prime minister if he stepped up his game, and he hasn't. I talked about this months ago, and he still hasn't.
Incredible. Well, Suanna Levy, I just want to thank you. We're going to watch these issues. We're going to see, I mean, it's been 48 hours now since that video of that despicable call to death for people of your community. Haven't heard a peep from the usual suspects. And we'll also be following the preacher's case, because what happened to him was absolutely egregious in comparison. And of course, we'll keep our eye on Section 13, because this is bad news for everybody that champions free speech. So thank you for dropping by. Always
you're
a
welcome.
pleasure.